Story time on when my father asked me for explicit pictures of myself. Now, I won't lie, this one is going to need a bit of a backstory. I grew up with my grandmother because my mother was and still is a drug addict to this day, who is not active in my life. My father was simply a deadbeat, but he did show up for the first time when I was around 15 years old, claiming that he wanted to establish a relationship with me. He stuck around for a month and a half before disappearing. Yeah, I didn't see or hear from him again until I went to college. He ended up randomly calling me out of the blue, asking if we could go to dinner and talk more about building a relationship and mending the distance between us. So I ended up going, even though I didn't want to. But a part of me felt like I just didn't want to go because I was still angry at him for being a crap father. Thanks to my anxiety, I ended up showing up pretty early, but he somehow still managed to get there before me, which made me feel like, wow, he's really invested, I should give him a shot. But the moment I sat down, he started this weird pity party for himself, claiming that he wasn't in my life because my mother was insane. Well, I can't say he was wrong, but mind you, he and his family were keenly aware that my mother dropped me off at my grandmother's house when I was 3 months old and never looked back. And at that point of us talking, I was in college. Even so, he finally opens up to say that he went to the doctor recently and things were not looking good. According to my father, they were running some tests, and he was afraid that he might not be okay, so he felt like mending things with his only child was the most important thing at the time. Now, I won't lie, I thought it was BS, but I couldn't tell if I thought it was BS because it was, or because I was just angry. So I accepted his apology, and agreed to attempt to build a relationship again. But, shocker alert, he disappeared again for 3 months, and I tried everything to get in touch with him, because I thought he had died. I ended up contacting his sister via Facebook, and she finally responded to tell me what his test results said. According to her, he came back with a clean bill of health. So naturally, the reason he stopped talking to me was because he felt like since he was healthy, there was no reason to mend anything between us. Fast forward 6 months later, his sister contacts me claiming that he was begging her for my contact information so that we could get back in touch again. I was going to say no, but instead, I decided to give him an ultimatum that if he jumped out of my life again, he was not going to be allowed back in. He then claimed that he was absent for so long because he was on the brink of being homeless and needed $600 in order to stay afloat. Me being a college student who got a refund check, I didn't mind giving him the money, but in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. Either way, he ended up calling me that night, claiming that he missed me and that he was sorry for being a deadbeat. I can't lie, I thought that was a turning point for us, because he had actually never apologized for that before. And then he asked me to send him a picture of myself, so I took a regular selfie, super cute, and he responded with, and I quote, "Can you send me another one? I can't see with all of your clothes on." The woman was too stunned to speak, so naturally, I hung up on him. Fast forward 4 years later, I hadn't heard from him since that last conversation, so I wrote him a letter. The letter I wrote and mailed to him was basically telling him that I forgave him. I even went into explicit detail of all the things I forgave him for in case he forgot. Even after sending the letter and getting confirmation that he received it, I still didn't hear from him for another 2 years, and you'll never believe what he said. When my father ended up calling me, he started off by saying that he didn't appreciate my letter, and even more so, he didn't appreciate the excerpt I wrote about him in my book that I published about my life. Now, the book was my first publication, and I didn't have an editor, so it kinda sucked a little bit, but it was the truth nonetheless. I kindly informed him that if he wanted to write a book and change the narrative, then he could do that. But considering he couldn't keep his own lies straight, it was definitely not recommended. When he started going on a tangent about how he demanded respect from me, I laughed and told him that the conversation was over, and that if he was waiting on respect from me, he would be holding his breath until he died. At that point, I had firmly decided that my father was no longer a part of my life, which wasn't really hard considering he wasn't really a part of my life in the first place. A couple of weeks later, his sister ended up messaging me on Facebook, claiming that my father once again went to the doctor and got some bad news. I sarcastically asked her what it was this time. A heart attack, a stroke, a sudden realization that he was a piece of shit, because I was so fond of these little cliffhangers that she liked to leave me every few years. She, however, did not appreciate my snark and claimed that I needed to respect him, stop calling him by his first name, and forgive him already. I won't lie to you, I lost my cool. I flat out told her that she should be ashamed of herself. As a mother, she was defending her brother for being a deadbeat father, not to mention defending the fact that he was low-key a pedophile, and that I'm pretty sure they've known he's been this way his entire life, and instead of helping him, they've enabled him, and I was not interested in joining their team to do that. I kindly told her that she was now blocked, and I'd appreciate it if she didn't send me any more messages from him, because unlike most people, I believe in shooting the messenger, because it sends a message, doesn't it? Either way, I've enjoyed the radio silence for the past few years. That is, until last year, when one of my father's exes called me, and you'll never believe what she told me. So my dad's ex ended up calling me. We'll call her Rhonda. Rhonda tells me that my dad and her have been in contact because he reached out to her. Turns out he's not just toxic enough to keep intruding on my life, he has to intrude on hers as well. Rhonda and I went on to have a long conversation because I actually like Rhonda. She's a pretty cool person. She goes on to tell me that my dad called her, telling her that he's doing great and that he's even expecting a new child on the way with a girl that's younger than me. I can't say I was surprised about her being young, but what did surprise me was the fact that she was expecting a child by my dad, simply because my dad isn't wasn't able to have children. I myself was a miracle. I suppose he should have named me Hercules, because my dad had a football injury in high school that was said to have prohibited him from ever being able to have children. So I asked Rhonda, do you think the child is his? She says no. I agreed. But Rhonda went on to say that my dad was over the moon about it. In fact, he was telling her things like, I can't wait to restart, and I can't wait to get it right this time. I want to start this out by saying that my father was in prison the first 2 to 3 years of my life. So I figure him being there for a child from the beginning all the way to adulthood may be good for him. But what he said still made me feel some type of way. How can you restart when you never started to be a father in the first place? But I digress. Perhaps this child could teach him to be a decent human being. And to my shock, she laughed. I mean a gut-wrenching, genuine laugh. So naturally, I asked her what was so funny. She says to me, I don't know how good of a father he's going to be considering he's in jail. Do you get deja vu, huh? When my father's ex told me that he was in prison, I was stuck. And I mean stuck to the point where all I could do was laugh, because what else was there to say? When I finally did get around to catching my breath, I asked what happened. According to Rhonda, my father was in prison for assault. How did he land in this predicament, you ask? Well, it turns out my father was lying about more than what I thought he was. He was telling Rhonda, as well as his family, that he was paying my college tuition, that he bought me a car, that he was paying my bills, etc. Mind you, I put myself through school and I'm still paying off student loans. I bought my own car. I've always had a job since I was 14, and he borrowed $600 from me. Yet he was paying for all this stuff while also living with his parents. If 2 plus 2 is 4 and 5 plus 5 is 10. But I digress. I've learned to stop being surprised by the lies my father has told. When I see something new, I'll throw $1 at it. But because of his lies, he attracted the attention of this new girl that he was dating. The one that's younger than me? Yeah. Apparently he was spending all kinds of money on her that he didn't actually have. So, instead of her telling him that she had a boyfriend, she continued to let him lavishly spend money on her, while also tricking him into believing that he was in a relationship with her. Fast forward a few months down the line, and she's pregnant. My father is over the moon, thinking that he gets a chance to restart, only for the girl's boyfriend to approach him after the baby is born and tell him that both the baby and the girl belong to him, and that my father is the one that's intruding. And sadly, my father could not handle this, so he and the girl's boyfriend get a little physical, and my father ends up in prison. I wish I had a time machine. Down with the I wish I had a time machine.
Am I the asshole for getting upset with my husband after he told me nothing will change while I'm pregnant? So me, 26 female, and my husband, 28 male, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby, as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago, I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago, me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now, he can be a little lazy at times, and it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything, and he was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, no, this is what is expected of you every night. I was just a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day, because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work? He wasn't yelling or anything, he was just talking to me quietly as if I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. This rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this? He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work at the moment. My job was not paying enough to justify me going in, so I am a full-time college student. He ended up saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it's a mother's job to push through, and if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby. There was a moment of silence before he started crying, and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. What a bitch. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do, he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So, am I the asshole for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it?
Am I the asshole for cheating on my husband with his brother? My husband and I have been married for 3 years, but my husband's always been very boring and kind of bland. The crazy thing is that I was the one that chased him and wanted to be in a relationship. I was 20 years old when we met, and I met him through a friend. He was kind of charming when I first met him, but what I really liked about him was that he was a doctor, he owned 2 houses and a beach house, and he seemed like a really responsible guy. Before him, I only ever met broke guys, so when I met him, I was like, oh my god, this guy could be it. Oh, and the other thing is that he's extremely shy, so he was not about to make a move on me or even talk to me, so I convinced my friend to invite us all out to dinner so that I could get a chance to talk to him. Throughout the entire dinner, he was so shy he basically avoided me, but then after the dinner, he told my friend that he thought I was cute, so I knew that I could win him. After that, we only saw each other at friends' parties, so on one occasion, I decided to just throw myself at him. I kissed him and I waited for his response. He said, thank you. He finally asked me out on a date and it was okay. I could definitely see me living my life with him. Obviously a boring one, but you know, whatever. We were engaged for 6 months and we started living together after that. He basically lets me do whatever I want with his money, and he also helped me open up my own business. So no, I'm not just living off of his dime, okay? Fast forward to quarantine, his brother came to live with us. And this is when things got really complicated. His brother is the total opposite, makes me laugh and we have so much fun together. Like, really good fun. So his brother moved in with us during quarantine. And as soon as he moved in, I was finally laughing and having fun. Like I said, my husband was really boring and shy. So you can imagine, like, even in bed, he was super boring. Like, he never wanted to do it. And if I ever asked him to, he would just say he was tired. So I got really sick of that. When his brother came to live with us, he would make jokes, we would laugh. He basically made me feel alive again. Here's how things went down with him. My husband loves to go golfing with his golfing buddies, so he would leave every single day for like 2 to 3 hours just to do that. So I was pretty much all by myself all day. He would also spend a lot of time where he worked at a hospital. On the other hand, his brother was home all the time. He and I would watch movies. He even started helping me out with my online business, and soon we became really good friends. I would tell him everything. I would even complain about how boring his brother was. One night we decided to have pizza and wine, and between us we both had 3 bottles. Throughout the movie we kept laughing, and every time I would just get closer and closer to him. Eventually I was sitting right next to him. That's when we look at each other and we just started macking on. It was uncontrollable passion and I didn't know how to stop, and we ended up doing it. As we were making out on the couch, I just kept thinking how much better my life would be with him as opposed to his boring brother. One thing led to another and we ended up doing it, and it was magical. And then every single day after that, we would kind of just smile at each other. When my husband was at home, he would steal kisses from me. If I was sitting on a chair, he would come by and quickly tickle my shoulder. I was living like a full-on romance novel. Of course, my boring husband didn't even notice. I was suddenly happy all the time. One day I asked my husband if he had noticed the change in me, and he said, "You're being silly. What are you talking about?" And right there, that confirmed that my husband didn't even care that I was suddenly happier. He wasn't even bothering to ask why. Either way, his brother was staying with us until he found his own house. And guess what? He ended up moving in 2 houses away from ours. By the way, he also owns his own businesses, so he's really wealthy. He's tried to convince me to leave his brother, but I don't know. Sometimes I think my husband doesn't really like women, but I'm not sure. I know you guys will think it's easy to just get a divorce, but I don't want to break his heart either. But at the same time, I want to be happy too. What should I do? Help!
I was in a very bad car accident about 3 years ago. A drunk driver ran a stoplight, cut off a semi-truck, which then crashed into me, sending me crashing into 2 different cars and then ultimately into an embankment. My car was completely mangled and my legs were crushed, completely destroyed, and it had to be amputated. I also lost a couple fingers, the tip of one and all of the other. I'm also left with some gnarly scars that used to bother me, but I'm learning to deal with them. I got a couple different insurance payouts and some pain and suffering money in addition to my medical bills being paid, and with my money I purchased a custom-made leg to take the place of the one I lost. When I have pants and shoes on, you can hardly tell unless you're really looking. I still limp, but some days I don't have as pronounced a limp. Earlier today, I went to the store with my boyfriend, my sister, her girlfriend, and our mother. I had to learn to drive with my left foot, but I'm really good at it now. I also bought a new car with my money and had to go through a ton of therapy to get past my PTSD, but I'm doing well there now as well. So I drove us, and because of my injuries, in addition to my leg, I also have chronic hip, neck, and back pain and some issues with my lungs from the time I spent intubated in a medically induced coma that led to pneumonia. I have a handicap placard for my car. I have trouble walking without getting tired, so it really helps to park close to the door. Today I did so and unknowingly took the space from someone who was circling back around for it. Apparently the man had been looking for a closed space and had missed the one I took and went down and around. He was still on the other aisle when I pulled in, so I didn't cut him off or anything and had no way of knowing that he wanted the spot. He parked in a yellow striped zone and got out and immediately began confronting me about stealing a space from him who actually needed it. How I'm just some kid who has no respect for those who are truly sick and suffering. He then ordered me to move. My group was just urging me to walk away, but this has happened before and once the police were even called. I'm sick of people thinking that just because I'm young, I don't have a legit need for a little extra consideration. I said, okay, and went to the car and got in like I was going to drive off. I was wearing a skirt and leggings, so it wasn't quite obvious at first, but when I sat down, I took my leg off and showed it to the man, including my stump. I then asked him if it was okay if I still parked there. He walked away calling me disgusting and rude and said I could have just told him and I made him look stupid. My group was embarrassed and said that I made things awkward because there was a crowd. So, am I the asshole for taking my leg off and making someone look dumb and feel uncomfortable?
Story time! And this happened to me like 40 minutes ago. So I was driving home tonight and my apartment building is on a street that's a dead end. So I'm gonna make this hair clip my car. So I was driving onto my street. So if this is my street and it like ends there, my apartment building is here. So I was coming with my car here and I turned there onto the street and I parked about here. So all I had to do was walk from here to here, which is like 10 meters. And that's like, what, 30 feet or something. So it's really, really close. All I had to do was walk there. So I parked my car, I got out, and as I started walking towards the entrance of my building, a man that was actually close to my building saw me. And suddenly, he started running towards me. And as he was running, he was yelling, "Shut your mouth! Shut your mouth!" So I, luckily, was still close to my car. So I jumped back in and I locked the doors. And just as I did that, the man arrived at my car. So because I was already inside, he went to the front of my car, so here, and he put his hands on the hood of my car, and he was like, "Get out of the car, open the window, get out of the car." So I was sat there, and I knew what I had to do was put the car in reverse and back out of there to go back from where I came from, because that's the only street out. So I put my car in reverse, and his hands are still on the hood, and he's still yelling at me, and I reverse, and as I'm doing that, he like follows my car and is like, you know, like following my movement with the car. So I was like, okay, well, I have to like really quickly like turn to go that way because if he goes to block the street, I'm stuck. Like I literally can't get out. So he's following me. His hands are on the hood of my car. I quickly turn and I get out of the street that way and I managed to get out. I then had to drive around for about 25 minutes waiting for him to leave my street so that I could park my car and go home. I'm just really tired. Like I just really want to be able to go home without that happening. I mean, I know that doesn't happen every day, but still, like, it happens often enough that it's really frustrating. I mean, not only is it obviously scary, but it's just like, why can't we just go home without being threatened?
The top of this, the other day a customer came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I think this is broken, it's way too light, it's leaking." And I was like, "Okay, I'll take a look at it." I took a look, I grabbed the item. You know what the item was? It was canned air. It was air in a can. Okay, and he was like, "Yeah, it's broken." I looked back at him and I was like, "Oh wait, no, it's just air in a can. There's nothing but air. It's not supposed to be heavy or anything." And he looks back at me and he's like, "Are you trying to scam me into buying something that's broken?" And I was like, "What am I supposed to say to that?" I was like, "Oh no, there's nothing else but air. It's not supposed to be heavy. It's not broken or anything." And he looks back at me and he's like, "I'm gonna go somewhere where they don't try to get me to buy broken things." And he walked away. He walked away. Like, what am I supposed to say? It was air in a can. It was canned air.